Welcome to What's My Tagline, a show where we put the microphone in front of the people who are typically behind the scenes, those responsible for marketing, sales, social media, PR, and event management. Well, hello, and welcome to What's My Tagline. I'm your host, Carol Flagg. Thanks for spending your time with us today. It's the holiday season as we say goodbye to 2024 and welcome in 2025. I'll be chatting with my good friend, Beth Friedman, Senior Partner at Global Marketing and Communications Agency, Finn Partners. She joins me to talk about her take on not wasting a single content asset. And we'll also look into our respective crystal balls on a couple of trends for 2025. Beth, welcome back to What's My Tagline. It's been too long.
Yes, Carol, thanks for having me back on the show.
Yeah, I'm looking at closing out this year and entering the new year with our chat today. But before we begin, as you know, you've been a guest before on this show. My first question of everyone who joins me is, if you had to describe yourself as a tagline, what would it be?
So, mine, especially with the focus of today's topic, is don't waste, try paste. And I'll be telling you about what that means as we go.
I like it. I like it. Well, I think in the spirit of the holiday season and everything new, old and new coming into 2025, I think mine is don't whine, drink wine.
I love it. I love it. I love it. No, I'm a wine fan.
I know you are, and actually that's a great segue into today's topic because you were recently in Portugal, which is at
Yes.
the very top of my bucket list. I know Porto is where they make port wine, so that wine tagline is a perfect entree. Another food, another food pun, a perfect entree into our conversation today. You reached out to me to talk about this topic, and I love it. But give us some backdrop about that.
Yeah, let me give you the backstory on this topic. So I was in Portugal and we were in Porto, as a matter of fact. I love Porto wine. There's a drink you should try called a port tonic. It is so good.
Ooh.
But for now, let me tell you about this don't waste try paste tagline I came up with. So we were in the Algarve, which is sort of the southern coast of Portugal. And one of the things that we did, there were two couples. We went to a cooking class, which we do that now on our trips, and it's so much fun. So we met an amazing woman named Lucia Ribeiro. She is a master chef. She also owns her own restaurant in the Algarve. And we took a cooking class from her, and we learned so much. We had so much fun. Lots of wine was involved, I'll tell you that. And one of the things she taught us was in the restaurant business, especially in her shop, you waste nothing. So we were making, one of the things we made was a salad, and we use those plum tomatoes, which usually you throw away the inside because they make everything so watery. Well, no, not in Lucia's restaurant. You save those and you make tomato water, which I had never
Mm.
had. It's absolutely delicious. So take the insides, put them in a colander with some cheesecloth and let them sit overnight, and you have tomato water. So I just really when I thought about content and our conversation, I thought about my cooking class in the Algarve.
Yeah, and this idea of not wasting any content. There's a story behind that too. Sort of like, so, there was something that bridged the gap here, right, between this cooking class you took in the Algarve. I'm so jealous and so envious of that, by the way, and not wasting content. It started with a piece of content. I think what you were telling me that you or your team wrote that didn't quite work by the time it was supposed to be released, right? And so they were like, oh, how do we repurpose this, or what do we do with this?
Yeah, exactly, Carol. So as soon as I came back from my trip, one of my colleagues called me and said, "Hey, I have a situation with a client, and this is a client that's in AI in the revenue cycle." So, Carol, as you know, that topic, AI in anything, just moves at the speed of lightning these
It
days, so
does.
fast, right? So we had written, I think it was to be an article, a byline article, and from the time we wrote it to the time that we were looking over it, getting approvals, things like that, they actually had a change in CEOs. So the new CEO looked at it, wasn't crazy about it. The client, the marketing VP at the client site said, well, let's just trash it. So that's when I had the conversation with my colleague to say, you know what, let's wait a minute. Let me look at this and let's see if we can not waste it, but try pasting it, right? So if we can take the piece, freshen it up a bit, and use it for something else. So we're in the process of doing that now. But that, just that experience really reminded me and reminded the rest of my team, especially in this day and age with so many tools that can help us reformat and reshape a piece, not to waste any content assets.
Yeah, and I think some of those tools, and I could be wrong about this. I mean, you obviously, as a senior partner at Finn, I mean, you do content 24/7 for your clients, right? That's
Right.
obviously a huge part of your role. I would think this is just me, but I would think because of the tools that are available, like generative AI and whatnot, I would think it could, it's you can create so much more content that you do waste more content. Do you know what I mean? Like, before there were a lot of tools and we sat down and we literally spent hours putting a piece together, we'd find a way to make that content work because it took so much time and effort, and it still takes time and effort to create really compelling content. But maybe in a world where we, can record and do videos and we can accelerate the process of producing content, and maybe we throw stuff away, or we do
Hmm.
waste it because we think in our heads, well, I'll just create another, right?
Ah, right, right. Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point because the creation part of it now can be done so much faster. I think is what you're suggesting, that maybe we just say, yeah, let's start from scratch. I don't know, Carol. I just think there's so much good stuff that we produce, and as you mentioned, at Finn we do content both, sort of the owned, branded. We also do earned. We do websites. We do campaigns. We do every single flavor, if you will, of business to business and healthcare IT content. Um, but we always think about how can we use it in another way, and how can we still make it valuable, still make it relevant, still make it, very, very specific to that client's target audience. I'll give you some examples. So we do speaking sessions a lot. We're pretty excited. We just got approved for two at HIMSS 25.
Oh, congratulations.
Yeah, so we're super excited to help our clients put those together. But speaking sessions can be great byline articles. They can be great like video, to your point, video or radio podcasts, fireside chats, perhaps. You can chunk them up into different pieces with that particular hospital or health system. So there's a lot you can do with a speaking session. I've even done what I call virtual roundtable articles where I'll take maybe a panel. Say we had a panel at a conference. I'll create an article out of that where I'm actually the moderator, and I ask each of the panelists a question, and then I kind of create their answers and narrative, and create an article and submit that as a guest article. I've had a lot of success with that format.
Do you think, as far as content goes, you mentioned it really as we started this conversation, about that particular piece. AI has made, of course, everything's getting faster, I guess. Uh, what about content? Well, I'm going to relate this back to food. It's like content that's been sitting in the freezer for a year. Maybe it's got a little, little little bit more frozen than it should be, right?
Little freezer burn.
A little freezer burn on it, and you think, oh, I got to throw that away, right? Is there a value for content marketers to look at the stuff that has probably been sitting on their website longer than it should be, right? Whether it's a recorded webinar or a video or a case study or a white paper or even some of these articles. Is there a value of going back and looking at that old content that's been sitting on ice for a while and
Wow.
and making something new out of it?
What a great question. I almost am going to say no. If you would have asked me that question a few years ago, I might have said yes, but I think that our industry, Carol, and you know this, it is moving so fast. Whether you're talking about cyber, whether you're talking about AI, whether you're talking about the workforce, whether you're talking about mergers and acquisitions, I don't know about you, but I feel like things are going too quickly for something that's maybe a year old to really still be relevant. And I think also what I would tell the audience is this day and age, because content can be created so quickly, you have to be extremely respectful of your authority. So what I'm
Mm,
saying there is, if you're putting out a piece of content, you've got to be spot on with it being up to date, relevant. The value of content now is going to be in who wrote it, who's interviewed. It's sort of in that authority or respect that you've earned in the industry. That's why people are going to read a piece or not read another piece, right? They're going to trust. It's that level of trust. And I feel like that level of trust might even be more important than it's ever been.
well, yeah, I think as you said, everything has sped up. Maybe a year is even that's a little bit too long,
Mm,
as far as the content game goes. But I think too, part of that, leading with authority and people reading the voices that they've come to trust. Some of that, I think, or maybe even a lot of it, is reflective of we have less time, to
hmm
consume
hmm
content. So what are we going to do? We're going to spend the time reading the voices that we trust, or a podcast or a radio show, listening to the voices that we trust.
Absolutely. I think so. I mean,
Yeah.
I see it just personally in myself, but I think that it's going to be a trend as we go into 25 and we look in the year ahead is that, pulling in those experts from a health system that people, oh yeah, I recognize that CIO's name, right? So that having that CIO in your piece of content in one shape or another is going to be important. So yeah, I do think the voices are going to matter more and more.
Yeah. I I'm always surprised, when I go to a vendor site, a company site, and I start looking at the first thing I go to their resource page. A, I want to know if they
Mm,
have a podcast. B, I want to know if they're doing webinars and what exactly they're doing. And it does surprise me really the number of times, and it's kind of not a rare thing, where the information that I see there is dated, like 2021,
mhm,
2022. It's like content marketers at these companies, like once they put a piece up there, they're afraid to take it down, because people
mm.
might be reading it or looking at it. They're not, obviously. I don't think they are. I mean, anything dated that old. But then at the same time, they think, well, gosh, the heavy lift of trying to rip and replace to put new content on there, um, it, it's challenging.
Yeah, so one of the things, and I totally agree with you. Actually, it's funny you bring that up. You're probably doing exactly what I'm doing too when I go to a new company's website. If they don't have a lot of new content, then I think they're a good target for us, right?
Oh,
As a
yeah, that's a good
possible new
point.
customer.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, but what I'm thinking is, and what we've suggested to some clients, because some clients will tell us, hey, we feel there is still value in this older content. So sometimes we'll create a separate section of that web page, almost like a sub page of the resources page that says, older content or library or something that indicates that that's older content, but it might still have some value. It's still searchable, but we may just kind of label it a little bit differently. Because you're right, nobody wants to look at anything. I don't know when I research because I do a lot of research for what I write. Anything before say 23, I think is irrelevant.
Yeah, yeah. I also think it's interesting getting back to this conversation about don't waste, try to
Mm,
paste. Just being really, especially on the health, with healthcare and our radio. Obviously, audio content is our primary function, right? And I think about some of the conversations that I've had, and I know our radio and podcast hosts do, where some of the most interesting things are said before and after the recording.
mm,
Like, don't waste some of the fun and maybe juicier bits, right? Do outtakes. I mean,
mm-hmm,
I know a couple of hosts that actually do outtakes. Stay on and listen to the outtakes. I listen to Audible books, and when they have outtakes from some of the books that I read, like I love it, right? So that's when I think of an audio standpoint, that's what I'm thinking. Like, don't waste that because
mm,
that could sometimes be the most interesting things said
Right.
during our conversation.
And sometimes the most fun stuff are social too. Like,
Yeah,
I'll always watch to the end of a movie to watch those, right? They're so fun.
yeah,
And my son is in film and you're right. They're super the fun part. That's the fun part.
yeah, yeah. Outtakes, and I do think as we close out 2024 and head in and move into 2025. I do think with again, getting back to the tools that you alluded to, I do think they do give us an opportunity, all content marketers, an opportunity to be more creative, right? And, I'm not saying they have to, the content should be irreverent. A lot of this content is incredibly serious stuff, right? And conversations, but it doesn't have to necessarily be presented in a dry way. It can be anecdotal, and then you could, like you said, you can use those anecdotes. Those anecdotes could be used to create additional content for other outlets that make sense,
Hmm.
for the client.
Yeah, absolutely. I love your outro suggestions. I might steal that from you
You
if you
can
don't mind, Carol.
steal, you can steal that. You can also steal my tagline, "Don't whine, drink wine."
So I won't waste that suggestion. I will paste that suggestion.
So
That's funny. Yeah,
that's
let's
funny.
talk a little bit about some of the tools because I got to tell you this week I had so much fun. One of my Fin colleagues suggested a new editing tool. It's from Source Code and it's called Cringe-O-Meter. Suggest everybody check it out. It is so fun, Carol. It made my day fun every day this week. So it's a chat GPT product, but you plug in your content and it gives you this kind of snarky, funny, but excellent suggestions of how to like tighten it up.
Cringe-o-meter.
It's called Cringe-O-Meter. That's my tool of the week. I mean, I one of my predictions for content and for all of us in marketing and whoever does communications is we are going to get, I think, so many more tools to make us more efficient.
Yeah.
And this is one. I mean, it made me so much more efficient this week. And to the point where my staff would send something to me, I would say, run it through Cringe-O-Meter first and then send it to me.
Oh,
So
that's so funny.
it's super fun. You got to try it.
Yeah, yeah. So that's a great segue into this portion of your program or this portion of the menu, which is 2025 trends for 2025. So obviously, like anything, there's an acceleration of AI tools, both in content and graphic imagery. Um, Video. I mean, link, you can use your AI tool in LinkedIn, your computers, it's there 24/7 for you to use. So you see more coming down the pike, as do I, right?
Absolutely. Whether it's, and really with the focus on how can it help me, whoever that me is, right? Could be a physician, could be a nurse, could be somebody in the revenue cycle in a hospital. How can it help me be more efficient and get my job done faster?
Yeah, yeah. What other content trends do you see for 2025? It doesn't have
Well,
to be content related, but yeah,
yeah.
2025 trends.
Well,
Yeah.
let's talk about I did, I had the chance to go to the Chime Fall Forum. I got to tell you, Carol, I'd never been my whole career, which is crazy.
Wow.
I went to it last month.
San Diego.
Yeah, lovely, obviously. Great place for any kind of conference, but it was really good. And I was pleasantly surprised to hear in pretty much every AI session the focus on data quality.
Yeah,
And so my background's in medical
I
records and I was a
do.
coder. So like I'm all about data integrity, data quality. The data's got to be correct and appropriate. I know you guys have a virtual event coming up on that topic.
We do. Yeah.
So it was just I was so glad to hear that because even one of the CIOs, I can't remember which one, said, "Hey, there's 5 pillars as we look at using AI in our health system, and data quality, data integrity is one of those." And it really just made me feel good. It was in every single AI session I went to. And why I think it's important. It's important on the front end and it's important on the back end. I'll tell you why. The appetizer, the front end, the front end, you've got to feed clean data into these engines. because they're relying on what you give them, right? The large language models, the data that's in your EHR, whatever's going into the AI engine needs to be correct and accurate. So there's this data quality piece up front, and it's really important for hospitals that are going through mergers and acquisitions because they tend to be kind of trying to, move data from the old system to the new system. And, that's an important time to really look at that data quality. We're still seeing a lot of errors, duplicates, things like that. So do the data quality up front. And then also on the back end, the dessert part, um, is what's that engine producing? And I didn't really think about this until Chime, but that whole data hygiene cycle. So what comes out of the engine? Are there hallucinations? Is it correct coming out?
Mm.
Is there any bias? So I think that part of what we're going to see more conversation around in 25 is the governance of the data as it relates to the use of AI.
Yeah, yeah. It's interesting. And I also, the governance question is obviously a critical part of the conversation and has been, especially this past year, and certainly with some of the cyber attacks we've had. I mean, we have like, AI wars, right? You know, good AI battling bad AI. So the governance question, I think, is going to be incredibly topical for 2025. Since we're talking about trends, let's talk about, and obviously the spring conference season is it's on its way. Conferences are obviously back, right? They're you
Yeah.
know they're big, and there was the announcement of Hive, a big conference company acquiring Health, which is a huge conference. Obviously, Informa acquired the HIMSS conference. Well, last year was the first year they were Informa, but this year they're really, it has Informa's, uh, recipe all over their website, basically. Yeah, yeah. So, what I think conferences in 2025, the right conferences, are going to be bigger than ever. What are your thoughts?
I think you're right. I think going back to remember how we started the show, we were talking about the value of the voice and the authority and the respect that that
Yeah,
person has. I'm going to go back to that on your question because I think that the value of conferences is in the speaking sessions. And if conferences continue to get, top line panels and speakers that are speakers that people want to hear. It's not celebrities. I'm not talking about celebrities. I'm talking about like Ray Lowe at Ultimate, who just got, I think, Epic 10 stars as an FQHC, right? How do you do that as an FQHC? So I think getting lineups of the actual experts that are doing the work that people want to hear from. And it could be that high level I just mentioned. It could also be one of our HIMSS abstracts was about collecting SDOH data in small community hospitals. And it's sort of that VP of clinical, VP, nursing VP, and VP of clinical coordination that's the speaker, right? So it could also be somebody lower than that C-suite, but somebody who's doing the work. I think that's where the conferences, if they can get those good speaker lineups with people actually telling those real world stories and not just pontificating,
yeah.
I think that'll bring value.
I do think too, with let's just talk about the provider side, money's tight, right?
Mm.
And I think the opportunity to meet with somebody at a conference face to face versus over a phone call or a Zoom call or, whatever, I think as a starting point has a lot of value.
Yeah, I agree. That's sort of on the converse side of the big events. We talked just now about the big events, but I like those sort of small, intimate
Yeah,
ones too.
yeah,
Where it's more about building relationships with your peers, networking, trying to really build sort of a small group of people that you can tap on and rely on to ask questions of. We used to do that a lot geographically, like here in Atlanta. I know all of our CIOs, they know each other really well and they talk all the time. But I don't know that everybody has that little core social network group anymore within their professional niche. So some of these sort of smaller, more intimate, um, they almost feel like a social event, but really what they are is is helping professionals build this trusted network. And
Right.
I think those are going to be pretty well attended to this year.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. Beth, believe it or not, we are all out of time. It just flies by. But it's been so great catching up with you. I love your Portugal story, and
You got to get there someday, Carol. It's fantastic.
top of my bucket list. Top of my bucket. And I will see you probably in the next couple months as the conference season begins.
Yes, I cannot make it to Vive, but I will be at HIMSS and I will see you there.
We'll be big on the HIMSS exhibit floor, Health Canada Radio, so we're excited about that. You can learn more about Beth Friedman on the Fin Partner website, finpartners.com, and be sure to connect with her on LinkedIn. You can learn more about this show on the program page on healthcarenowradio.com, and be sure to send me a note and also connect with me on LinkedIn. Until next time, I want to know, what's your tagline?